Hello there. Today we are looking into the logging system for the game engine. So, if you remember in the last episode, we had this diagram kind of drawn up, which has mysteriously disappeared. So I just drew out a very simple example here. We've got the client side of the engine, which is basically where all the game code goes. We've got the engine side of the engine, or maybe we'll call it core or something. This is where all the engine code goes. And then we've got these two systems, logging and events, and we want those to be global so that we can use them anywhere. Use them in the client side, use them in the engine side, because it's just necessary. So today we're going to be focusing on the logging system. I just want to walk you through the process of designing something like this. Now the first thing that you might want to do, and I recommend, is just to go on the internet and search logging system in C. It doesn't have to be C. You can just look at other languages just to get an idea of what people are doing. So most of this stuff is C++, which is fine. And we can just kind of look through, okay, this is the kind of usage, message arguments, etc., etc. And this is the output. So depending on what your requirements are for whatever your building is, you can just kind of skim through these, see if it matches up with what you're looking for and the amount of flexibility that you need and all that kind of stuff. And then go from there. So I kind of already know what I want to do. And what I want to use is some macros. I'm just going to define some macros so that we can type anywhere. Something like log e, and then the message that we want to log, basically, and then the arguments. So it'll take a string like a normal C function. So we can put stuff like this in here. I can get my keys right. This is why I don't do live coding yet. Something like that. S is D, and then we don't want to have to worry about putting a new line on the end of it, because that's just busy work that we don't need to do. Alright, so I've got something like this, and then we just say, I don't know, something. So that's the name, some kind of name, is some value. And this is an error, right? So in the system that we have envisioned, then this error is actually going to exit the program. So I think I will build that into the log system. So I think I'll build that into the log system, and then Yobo! Okay, something you might notice about this definition here is that we've got two arguments, well, three actually. But what if we actually wanted to have four or two? So we need to find a way to set up a variable number of arguments for a function. Now, one way you might think of is if you know anything about macros. You could define this function as a macro and have like log e1, log e, 2, 3, 4, and then that would just be how many arguments are there. But we don't really want to do that. That's kind of annoying. So what you can do is you jump on over to DuckDuckGo. We can look for something like C, and I have to keep looking at my keyboard because, as I said in my last C video, I have a new keyboard and a whole new layout, and it's horrible. So I want to look for something like C variable arguments. And here we have it. Alright. So this page is telling us that we can create a function with a variable number of arguments. And we have to use this va list type in the stdarg.h header file. So now that we know this is possible, we can kind of come up with an idea of how we want this to work. But first we want to make sure that we have the desired compatibility, and we do. Well, I'm writing the engine in C89. However, you can feel free to use whatever you want. C++, C11, or I think there's C19 as well. In any case, I'm just gonna get out of this. Where am I? I am in my video directory, which is doing the current screen recording. That's not where I want to be. So let's just go here. Alright, so in the Ember source directory, well, we've got a source folder and a readme, that's it. If we ls the read the source directory, we'll get just a main.c file. It has nothing in it really. What we want to do is probably cd into source, make a directory here called log. Alright, I'm just going to do a bunch of stuff and then I'll explain. Alright. So, I don't know how beginner I want to get in this series, but if you don't know how to create files and directories and that kind of stuff from the command line, that's cool. You can do it whatever way you want. I'm going to do it this way. I'm probably not going to explain everything that I'm doing like this because there's other videos that are tailored towards that and they'll be doing a better job. So I'm just going to create a log header file here. Let's just open this up. And here we can kind of decide, what we want this to really look like. So what do we want? We want to be able to log errors and then exit the program. Or we want to be able to log just any kind of information. So I say we make two functions. One is just log e. This is the one that exits the program. I'm not even going to fill out a definition just yet. Actually, yes, I will. So the definition is, it's going to take a same thing as a printf function, which is a format string. Now I've got to make sure we go look that up, printf, what type that is. So it's just a constant character, a reference to a constant character. That's cool, we can do that. Alright, constant character, and we would just want to set this to format. Let's just do fmt. Right, and then we want ... but we haven't specified a return type. The return type is going to be void, so we don't need this to return anything. So that's what it's going to look like. Very simple. Now we're just going to do the same thing, but instead of E, I'm going to do I for information. So we could just make it log, but I have a feeling that log is going to conflict with a whole bunch of other things. Log E and log I, probably not. However, if there are conflicting things later with some libraries that we might use, then we can just rename these at that point, but I doubt it's going to be a problem. Now let's open up split, and we'll create another file called log.c. If I can type. Okay, now in here we want to include the header file that we just made. In fact, I don't think we even need the C file. I think we can actually just define, we can implement these functions in the header. We're not going to be doing anything crazy, so I think we can probably just use a header only. So let's do that. So what is this going to do? Well, this is going to take in a format, and it's going to take in a bunch of arguments, and then it's going to print to a log file and also to the console, and then it's going to exit the program. So what do we got? We got print f. All right, and then we've got sprintf as well, although it might be, yes. So printf is going to print to the console. Sprintf is going to print to a file that we can specify, and then we're going to exit. And I'm going to put this as a 1. Okay, I want to be very clear about the purpose of this particular library. Well, it's a tiny library. So in the beginning, it's just going to be very, very simple couple of functions that we can use. However, later on, it may be expanded to include things like threaded logging, where if something is running indefinitely on the main thread, you can still log stuff using a logging thread. So you can see what's going on even when the program is hung on the main thread. However, we're not going to need any of that for maybe even ever. So for now, it's going to be very simple, to the point. We want stdio. So there's a couple of these websites that are actually really good for just double checking functions. Always good to make sure you know exactly what you're doing. Okay, I've opened the main C file, and I'm just going to now include the log file that we made. So let's just do that. Log. Now here we just want to try using log e, and we'll just try a very simple example. Right, we know we want to use this VA list of arguments somehow. And then we also know that we kind of want to use this, you know, this, just like printing, printf, you know, this kind of format. So we've got that set up. Of course, nothing happens when we run it, because, well, because this doesn't do anything. So we're going to go back and have a look at the variable arguments thing. So what have they got? A VA list, right? And if we have a look, we want something more like this, although I think this is VSN printf. I think that's C++. Oh, here we go. vprintf sends formatted output to a stream using an argument list passed to it. That sounds like what we want. vfprintf. So the stream in our case is just going to be stdout for now. Format is format, and the argument list is the same. Let's see if that works. vfprintf. stdout is just the console that you start the program in. This can just be format. Let's see how that works. It does not work at all. Why is that? Because we didn't surround it with this. So we have to surround it with these start and end functions. So what do? So the C library macro va start initializes AP variable to be used with the va arg and va end functions. I see. Let's have a look. Va underscore start. There it is. We'll grab that. Yep. AP is fine. Param is, what was it, format? And we'll put the AP in again. Now this is complaining because I keep forgetting to put semicolons. Let's have a look. Cool, that worked. We printed out test. Of course, we forgot to add the new line. But that's fine. So we can do another fprintf. And we're actually just going to print new line. Okay, cool. So it's printing one parameter, fine. Let's try adding some more. So we'll put in a %d and a %f. So we'll just add a number and a float. There we go. Now let's try this. Very good. That's pretty much what we wanted. We just need to also print it to a file. So rather than doing anything too crazy, I think it might be prudent to just do something like this. Not there. File. There's a way that you can open a file, and if it doesn't exist, no, you can create it. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a few modes when we want to open files. One of them is open a text file for writing. If it does not exist, then a new file is created. Here your program will start writing content from the beginning of the file. That's okay. I think we'll probably use that one. What about this one? Opens a text file for both reading and writing. It first truncates the file to 0 length if it exists. Otherwise creates a file if it does not exist. Yes. Okay, let's go with this one, W+. That means that the file is going to be erased every time we run the program. And I'm going to set this as just session.log. Okay, and this is where we put in the options, so we're just going to put W+. Okay, now we want to make sure we close the file, even though we're about to exit the program. Just good practice. Now if we just duplicate this, right, and then here we just put F. There we go. That's pretty simple. That's all looking pretty good. So now it should create a session.log file in this directory. There it is. Let's just print that out. Interesting. I don't think we can do this because this advances the... Alright, so thinking about it some more, I think an easy way to do this is to use vsprint or vsprintf. So what that's going to do is we create a string up here, right, and we'll just call this out. And then rather than printing this to standard output and a file right here, we print it into this string, and then we can modify the string however we want and then print it later, because we're going to add want to add like date and color and that kind of stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is just, well, I've already set it up here, but let's walk through it. Set up this output string. It's just going to be 512 characters long. It's unlikely that anything that you want to print is going to be longer than that, but if it is, this can be modified in the future. Now, instead of printing directly to the console or to a file, we actually print into this character array. And then, after that, we just print it out to the terminal, and then we also print it out to this file. And then we close the file. So that's everything we wanted to achieve. Let's just have a look at what that looks like. That's correct. And if we run that, that's correct as well. That's cool. Okay, as you might imagine, there's a lot of stuff that I just cannot keep in my memory all the time. Especially things like specific printing functions and that kind of stuff, and also stuff to do with time formatting, etc. So I've just pulled up this snippet from a file that I made a while ago, which was for something else, but is actually similar to what we're doing right now. That's on the right hand side here. That's this over here. And we're going to use a little bit of this stuff just to make it a bit easier for ourselves. So we know that we want to stick the date and time at the beginning of this file, at the beginning of this line rather. Right, so we're copying all of our text into this array here. We also want to copy the time to the beginning. According to what I've got here, we're going to need a couple of things. So this gets the time in milliseconds, I believe, since 1970, January 1st, etc., etc. It's called epoch time. And I haven't actually included the time header yet, so that's going to bug out. And then we need something called a TM struct, and I've just called mine TM. And this allows us to format the time and convert that into one of these TM structs. Okay, so this function that we're writing now is actually just going to format the time to a particular format that we designate. So what is this? Date 20. So this is the where we want to put it. I think what we want to do is actually put it in our out variable. We'll say it's 20 long. Why did we say 20, I wonder? Well, let's have a look. So year, dash, month, dash, day, colon, hour, colon, minute, colon, second, null terminator. Okay, yeah. So we actually need 20. 20, well actually we need 19 because we're not going to be terminating it in this instance. So let's do that. I'm just going to copy this from over there. Bam. Alright. So we need to include the time header. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, make a character pointer to the beginning of, or to the part of the string that's after the date. So we want to do, let's just call it after date. We're going to grab the address of out. And then we're going to get the 20th character. And we want to actually start from there. So when we print this, we want to print it into after date. Right? And then that should make it so that the first 20 characters don't get overwritten by this script. Cool. Okay, I've got a little bit of garbage in here. Perhaps this does need to be 20 long and I'm just being an idiot. I'll put this at 21. Yeah, that looks better, except now it's null terminated, which is not what we want. So if I put this at 20. Cool. Put this at 19. I think this is going to mess it up. No, actually, that worked. Okay. So this needs to have the null terminator, but we can just overwrite that. So we need to get rid of this null terminator, but we also need to copy this into the correct spot. So what do we do? Well, we'll just copy this to 20, and then we're going to change this. We're going to set out 19 equals space. Yeah. That should work. Cool. Now we've got the date, the time, and exactly what we wanted to print out. That's great. Now, of course, we can add more things. So rather than just adding this, we can... I keep pressing the wrong button. What if we add this character here? Right, and then we change this to 22. And I'm just going to run that. Okay, that works. So let's change this to 21. And we'll change this to 22 as well. Great. So now we've got a bit of a separation between the date and the time. The only thing we don't have is whether the log is an error or if it's information. So we should probably add that, which means we're going to have to add something like this. String copy, and then we're going to have to grab the string header, which we don't have. So we want to copy into the after date position. And what do we want to copy? Well, we want to copy error. So let's just type that out. We'll use the square brackets again. And close the square brackets. Close this. I think that's all we need to do for that. But it is going to mess up the rest of our string. So it's going to be not even visible because it's being overwritten. Now we want to make another one of these, or we can advance the pointer. So we can say SCR copy after date here, and then we can say after date plus. Well, it's going to be a different length depending on if it's an error or an info, but this is the error function, so that's going to be 7. There we go. Now I can actually change this one. So change this to 21. Okay, test it again. That's cool. Now we don't have that separation. It's not a huge deal because we have the date and the error kind of text there in the bracket, so it's easy to see what comes after that. But I'd like to add the space anyway. So what does that entail? Well, I'm going to need to change this to 8. Cool. Now that's going to null terminate again, which is what we would expect. So we just need to change the there we go, 28th one. So that's what we wanted. And that's pretty much it for the error function. Let's just clear this, run it again. We've got the date, we've got the time, we've got the error message, and we've got the correct formatting. So that's cool. Now if we cat the session file, we can see that it's exactly the same. That's nice. Now what if we run 2 of these? And then we'll say this is test 2 and change this to 3. This to 3 as well. Alright. Okay. That did not work. And the reason that it didn't work is because we can't I'm an idiot. Because we exit the program. We can't, of course we can't log 2 errors like that. So what we need to do now is actually make the other function here, which is the info function. Now I know a lot of people don't like the idea of copying and pasting code and reusing it and all that, and we should probably split this out and yada yada yada. And I in general agree, but for the time being, these functions are so tiny that it doesn't matter. And if they do get too much larger, then, you know, we can just change them later to make sure that it's all not getting too out of control. But for right now, I say this is totally acceptable. That should work. So now if we go up here, this E, change this to an I, save it. Bam. We've logged info, we've logged error. And now let's have a look at the session file. And the session file just has error. Why is that? Did we mess up with this W+? Opens a text file for both reading and writing. It first truncates the file to 0 length. Yes. Yes, we messed up. We don't want that one. Because every time we print info, it's going to destroy everything. So the one we want is just W. Let's change that. Alright. There we go, we've printed info, we've printed error. They both have the correct values. Test 2, 2.9, test 2, 3, 3.9. Great. Now let's have a look at the session log. It still just has the error. Right, because we're writing to the start of the file. We need to be appending. So we messed up twice on this. We need to do the A option here. Now I'm not sure if we need to call both of those. Nope. Yeah, we wanted the A option all along. Alright. Here we go, that looks good again, and huzzah! Right, this is working, but of course we called it session, but it's actually just going to keep putting more and more stuff in there, even though it's technically not the same session. That's not what I want for this log file. You know, that can be a problem for later, I think. So for now, we're just appending to this session.log file. Now in the initialization of the engine, we're just going to wipe that file. That's how it's going to work, I think. But we'll get to that in the next episode when we actually look into a bit of the initialization stuff. So I'm just going to go over a little bit of the order of things. So I've got logging, which is what we've just been doing. That's pretty much done. We might tweak it here and there. Events is the next big thing. But I actually haven't even added initialization in here, so why don't we add that? Because this actually needs to come probably here. Yeah, I think so. So we're going to have initialization, which is going to be making sure that all the files are correct and everything loads up properly and all that kind of stuff. So that'll be in the next episode. I hope you found this video entertaining or informative, or both. And make sure you subscribe for more engine series videos. It's going to be like this for a while. I'm going to be real with you. It's going to be like building some sluggish kind of systems and writing a lot of boilerplate for a bit. I think where it's going to get really fun is when we actually get into the ECS stuff. That's what I find most interesting. So we've got a few things to get through before then. So I'm going to try and make it as quick as I can. But I'm thinking that we'll only spend one episode on each of these things. Maybe 2 episodes on events, because events is pretty big and it's a pretty big part of the engine. But I'd really want to get to ECS as soon as possible. That's when we can start, I don't know, really playing around with some interesting concepts. So that's what we're going to be doing. Next Sunday will be the next episode. Make sure you subscribe so you get that. And if you like the video, please leave a like. It does help me out and it helps the channel. Thank you. Gotcha.